Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar, Supercharging Student Engagement in a High Flex Fall. We're super excited to have you today. My name is Lindsay. I'm going to be introducing our presenters in a minute, but I just wanted to go over a couple of housekeeping items. You see some instructions on your screen. If you would like to join our iClicker course and participate in polls today, just follow the instructions on the screen. Just download the iClicker student app for iOS or Android, or visit us at iClicker.com to get into the student experience. You can sign in with existing instructor account credentials or create a new account. You'll see the prompt to create an account if you don't have one. And then you just join the webinars course below to participate in polls. So it's pretty straightforward. You can be going through those instructions in the background while I continue to talk. I wanted to let you guys know that we are recording this today, and we will be sending out a copy of the recording after the webinar. So within 48 hours, you'll have that in your inbox. Also, as part of today's webinar, we do have a free class readiness activity that you can run in class with iClicker that we're going to be sending out. We'll send that out with the webinar recording, and you'll get a quick preview of it today as well. Other items, feel free to ask questions along the way. You can put them in the chat or in the questions panel. We have iClicker folks on standby, ready to answer any questions that you have. And we will be able to ask our presenters questions at the end of the webinar as well. Okay, so I'll just do another call for if anybody wants to join the course. Natalie, if you'll just go back to that for like 10 seconds. And if you have any questions at all, please put them in the chat about joining. We'll give that just a few more minutes to sit because I know people are joining. Okay, I have 11 to 7. I'm going to go ahead and introduce you guys, Natalie and Mandy, and then we can get started. And you'll have a couple more opportunities to join the course today. So Natalie Dugal is our resident faculty advocate and iClicker trainer at Macmillan Learning. She is a previous community college instructor where she taught English for 13 years. She is passionate about pedagogy, practicality, and alliteration, as you can tell. We're super excited to have Natalie on for this webinar. Mandy Schaefer is our, sorry, I'm moving over to her bio. Mandy has over 17 years of experience in education with a focus on student success, engagement, and technology. She's the Director of Institutional Initiatives at Macmillan Learning. She has a BS in sociology and a master's in elementary education from The Ohio State University. After also spending time in the classroom like Natalie, she turned her passion for teaching and learning into writing and editing textbooks, developing educational technologies, presenting and training on pedagogy and retention platforms, and consulting with institutions on retention, student success, and engagement. An Ohio native, Mandy now calls Orlando, Florida home. So we're so excited to have both of you. So without further ado, I will turn it over to you guys.
Okay, thank you so much, Lindsay. So I'm gonna do my portion first, and then Mandy is going to do the second half. But this is what we're going to cover today in our Supercharged Student Engagement in a High Flex Fall. First thing that we're going to do is we're going to talk about anticipating in a high flex fall. You know, everybody's got different situations that are going on. And then again, we're going to invite you to join our iClicker session so that you can play along as a student and you can just see what the iClicker experience is like for them. And also it makes this presentation that we're doing right now more engaging, which means it's going to be stickier for you as a participant. So we're practicing what we preach with our iClicker session today. So we'll go into the iClicker polling question demo, and you'll be able to see the different question types and how they can be used in different classrooms. And then Mandy's going to come and she's going to talk about iClicker Insights, which is a really great way to get to know your students on a whole nother level. And then lastly, as a thank you for attending, like Lindsay mentioned, there will be a bonus of free content that, again, Mandy's going to talk more about. Okay, so anticipating a high flex fall. A lot of instructors have a lot of different concerns and questions that they're bringing, particularly to their classrooms this fall, now that we're seeing that there is a new normal and there are going to be some things that persist that are a little bit different than, say, 2 years ago. So here are some of the different concerns that instructors have. They want to know, how can I know early on where obstacles to student preparedness and motivation may exist? They want to know, how can I know if my students are attending class? Especially, let's say you're doing a synchronous class and you want to know, hey, who's actually showing up live to watch these videos? How many of them are actually there in this class period? They want to know, how can I maintain a learning environment where students feel comfortable engaging with one another? That community aspect of our classrooms we've found is more important than ever. And we can't wait to get back to having community in our classrooms, whether they're taking place online or in a brick and mortar classroom. But we understand that we have to do more than ever to create an environment that's safe and comfortable for all students to engage. Instructors also want to know, how can I provide efficient support for asynchronous learning? So, you may still have a lot of classes where you're not having those live meetings with your students. iClicker can still help in those situations. And then they want to know, how can I quickly know where the muddiest points are in the content that we cover? A lot of times students, even if they're really into participating, they're extroverts, they're always raising their hands, they're not always quick to point out to you, the instructor, where they're having the most trouble. And iClicker can really help with that. Lastly, instructors want to know how they can support students as they self-study and focus on key concepts in class. So for all of these teachers' concerns, we have instruments within iClicker that can help. So when instructors think about how they can learn about their students before class, you can learn about students before class with iClicker assignments. So this is a really great tool where you can ask students to answer a set of questions that are like iClicker polling questions, but they get to do it at any time, and they get to do them in any order. So a lot of instructors are assigning iClicker assignments as a pre-assignment to students so they can find out, hey, how ready are you for my classroom? For instructors that are wanting to know if their students are attending class, we have iClicker Attendance. And I love this tool not only because it gives instructors a really easy way to keep track of when students are in class, but it also gives students the ability to self-regulate. They get a beautiful little calendar that they get to see every day that they attended, every day that they missed, and every day they were excused. So they don't come up to you and say, can I miss class on Thursday? Instead, they have to go into their record and actually see when they've attended. So it really helps them be self-reflective, self-efficient. With iClicker polling questions, we're really able to take that learning environment and make it really comfortable, and make it a place where every single student voice is valued and welcomed. So with iClicker polling, we have the anonymous mode where you can ask questions where students' names are not attached to their responses. So if you're trying to figure out, student confidence levels in a class where that's a really important thing, using anonymous mode is really, really helpful. Also with iClicker polling, you're able to show results of the entire class to the entire class. And for students who may not feel that confident about how they're performing in class, being able to see how they are among their peers is really reassuring and helpful. If you're going to be doing asynchronous classes this semester, iClicker assignments also helps to make those classes feel interactive and feel more supportive to students that are in it, because they're actually working on something as you're speaking, say in a video, and they're able to make that kind of maybe canned item feel more interactive. With iClicker exit polls, you're going to get students identifying that muddiest point consistently over the course of a term. So when you end with an exit poll, students are asked to rate their understanding of the class on a between 1 and 5 scale, and then they're also given a field where they're able to ask additional questions of their instructor. This is incredibly valuable information for instructors who are trying to track student success. And then lastly, when again, instructors are trying to encourage students to really self-study and focus on key concepts from class. We have iClicker study tools. Again, this is a really positive tool that students love, that take all of your iClicker polling questions and turn them into flashcard packs or practice tests for students to engage with later. One of the things about iClicker that we find really important is that we want students to love using iClicker and for them to look at it as a very positive part of their class that's very student focused. So when we create these tools, our focus is always on the student at the end of the use. So let's get that student experience a little bit for you right now. If you haven't yet, we want to encourage you to join our iClicker session. To do so, all you need to do is sign in as a student at iClicker.com or through the iClicker app on your phone. Then you just need to go ahead and add our course. The course information is, our institution is Macmillan Learning. The course is Supercharge Student Engagement. And you could also use our quick join link, which this isn't clickable because right now I'm sending it to you through GoToWebinar. But if you look in the chat, you can click on this. This should be there for you to click, and you will quickly be joined into the course. So I'm going to give everyone a second to go ahead and do that. And I have the iClicker instructor app on my phone, and I can already see that most of you have joined our iClicker session. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go over to our first iClicker question. And again, if you're still joining our course, that's okay. This is what it's going to feel like for students on that first day when they get asked a question. We're going to take our time with this. So I want to know how everyone is teaching this fall. Are you teaching A, in person, B, hybrid, C, online only, asynchronous, D, online only, synchronous, or E, I am not teaching this term? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up my iClicker Cloud toolbar. I'm going to make sure that I'm on the question type that I mean to ask. And then I'm going to click the play button to turn on my poll. And it sent a desktop capture to everyone's devices, and now everyone is able to respond. So we've got a lot of people in our session today. I'm clocking about 21 people, 22. Still got more people joining up. Okay. All right, and with multiple choice questions, once you've asked the first one, it takes about 30 seconds for students to respond. Since this is your very first question that you've responded to, and I still see people adding the course, I'm going to let it go until the full minute. Okay. All right, and then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to stop it right here. All right, and now I can click on those results and I can see how people are teaching. Wow, I see that about half of our group is getting to teach in person. How wonderful, how great that must feel. You must be really excited to go back to that classroom. We've also got a lot of hybrid people here. So they're going to be in person a little bit, online a little bit. We've got some asynchronous online folks here as well. Looks like nobody's doing synchronous only, and then a few people that aren't teaching this term. You can see here to grade a question is correct. I just go through and I touch them to turn them green, and then everybody gets a point. So that gives me a nice feeling of what's going on with you all this fall. Let me ask you another question that I think is really important when we talk about iClicker. How do you define active learning? So with a short answer question, I have about 140 characters that students can answer with. I'm going to go ahead and change this to short answer. I'm going to hit that play button. You can see the desktop capture that gets sent to students. I get that little preview. And then my students are able to answer with 140 characters like a tweet. So I've got one response so far. These short answer questions take a little bit longer, but not too much longer. All right, now my last question, I had about 24 responses, so I'm gonna keep on watching this, see how it ticks up. And again, as the instructor, I have the iClicker instructor app on my phone, so I'm able to preview both my audience and I'm able to preview the responses. Great. Okay, I'm going to stop this at the 1 minute mark again. 26 responses. I can see more people are adding. All right, let's go ahead and see those results. Okay, so people have a lot of different ideas: working with the material, completing practical exercise, student interaction, engagement. Let's see what this looks like as a word cloud. So this is really great because it takes the words, and by how often they appear in in answers, they get bigger and bigger. And I can see that students are always at the center of whatever it is that we're doing. I'm also seeing a lot about participation, process, activities. I'm seeing a lot of words that really have to do a lot with active learning. But just to level set, this is the difference between passive and active learning. So with passive learning, instructors present information, and it's that very stereotypical idea of the instructor at the front of the classroom giving that lecture for 50 minutes, and students sit there and write things down. And it's the old idea of the empty vessel or the dry sponge, where the instructor is pouring instruction and knowledge into these students, and they're going to collect it like a blank slate. So students, primarily in those classes, their job is to listen and take notes. And there's nothing particularly wrong with that, but that's just how we've been doing it for a long time, and that's kind of how we've expected things to go. Class is a one-way conversation that comes from the instructor to the student. Now, when we think about active learning, instructors involve students in the lesson. Students are absolutely vital to the class moving forward. Students learn by doing in the active classroom. So they are challenged to participate very, very actively, not just in writing down notes, but by actually participating in activities. And what I think is essential to remember is that class is a two-way conversation between the student and the instructor. So that means that, sometimes the instructor makes a move and the student needs to adjust, but it also means sometimes the student makes a move and the instructor needs to adjust. I think every instructor who's used iClicker has asked an iClicker question and has gotten unexpected results from it and has had to adjust their lesson plans as a result. That's a really good example of how iClicker makes it a two-way conversation and not just one way. So here's an example of a target question, and this is also an example of the type of question that you want to be asking yourself as you think about iClicker as a larger assessment tool. So with a target question, what I do is I change it to target and I ask my question in the traditional way. An image is sent to students, and then for you to respond, what you're going to do is you are going to touch where you feel the student who isn't going to finish the course is sitting. And then once you've put that dot on your image, click the send button and it will send the response to me. So this is a really cool type of question for chemistry classrooms, mathematics classrooms, art classrooms, any classroom. This is a really interesting way to ask a question. And again, I can just kind of watch my responses pile in. On my first day when I ask these questions, I need to let there be a little bit more time just as people get used to the system, but you'll see none of my questions have run over a minute at this point. All right, I'm gonna let this one go to the minute too, so click that send button if you haven't yet. All right, let's go ahead and look at our results. Okay, you can see our results, and I can make this nice and big if I want to. They're kind of all over the map, aren't we? You can't just look at a group of students and see who isn't going to pass class. I love whoever picked the instructor. To grade this question, all I need to do is draw a square around where I feel the correct answer is, and then click save. And this is kind of a trick question because, again, you cannot look at students on their outside and decide who is not going to finish the course or who's not going to finish their degree. So I'm going to hand it over to Mandy now because she's going to talk more about ways iClicker can be used to identify those kinds of students. Take it away, Mandy.
Okay, can you hear me okay?
Yes, you sound great.
Okay, perfect. So I'd like to talk to you about iClicker Insights as well. And this is kind of an additional tool that can help with student success. And before we get started, I want to show you this quote. And I'd like you to think about this quote for a minute. So this is true for all human beings, right? But it's especially important for college students because what they perceive their college experience to be plays a really big role on their student retention and persistence. And so this is a group of really high performing students, and but one of them is going to either drop out of your course or leave the institution. Can you guess which one? And this is, this is kind of similar to Natalie's, and we'll do a target question again to get this going. And I'll give it away a little bit because there's not really a way to guess which one, right? We know that these students are 4.0 students. They come to every class. They joined the institution with super high ACT and SAT scores. So I see I have 13 responses. So I appreciate that. And I will also show you, for those of you who have not logged into the iClicker app, you can either use it on a smartphone or on a browser, on your browser. Whoops, I just got the screen share that went away. But my screen? I know I took Natalie's.
I think you're limited in my screen to my
Yeah, I think
you
you're
want a
right.
web browser?
No, that's okay. Let's go ahead and just show the results. I'll stop the clock and show the results. Interesting, very interesting. We got quite the variety there. But just like Natalie asking which students not paying attention, you also don't know which student is struggling if it's such a high performing group of students here. But this kid, he's the one who's going to leave, because you're not going to know which one's going to leave, and neither does your institution unless you have more data that really looks into the hearts and minds of the students, to their perceptions of the institution. Remember the cat and the lion back there? Their perceptions of the institution, their perceptions of your class, and their world. So this student here, even though he's 4.0, he's not motivated in your class, and he's overly committed, and he just doesn't even know where to go for help. So I'd like to know on your campus, let me put this in multiple choice mode and start the clock, who is responsible for student success on your campus? Is it instructors? Is it staff like advising, or the student retention center, or the student retention leaders? Is it everybody? Or is it the students themselves? All right, we got some good results coming in. While you're going, I'll go ahead and just open the results. You can keep submitting your answers. I won't lock you out. Woo, all right. D, everyone. And that's exactly right. Student success begins at the instructor's level because you are closest to the students. So if you can take small steps to help students in areas where you can help them, such as addressing attendance issues or the courses that they're struggling in, then you've really taken a large load off the retention staff, and it'll leave them to help with items such as financial issues and homesickness and things that you might not be able to help with as an instructor. Beautiful. So Macmillan has an amazing research team, you may or may not know about it, that spent 3 decades finding the very best questions to ask students that'll measure their predictive outcomes. And these questions have been tested with millions of students at hundreds of institutions. And each survey question has a proven effect on and a link to retention. And so we have these short surveys, and these, I will say, are not meant for individual instructors. These are surveys that your retention team can send out to students, or your first year experience college success course could share with students. But I just kind of wanted to show you this and show how it led to us creating something for instructors. So we have this class readiness activity, and this is what you'll be getting for free for attending this webinar as a thank you. And this readiness activity is a set of surveys to help you understand the expectations, the motivations, the behaviors of your students, and to really be able to collect data to help with academic success. Now you can use these as an assignment in iClicker, sort of a self-paced assignment that students can do at any time, or you can use it as an in-class poll. So these are the topics that come with this activity. So we're looking at academic motivation and preparation, students' perseverance and resilience to bounce back if they, get a bad grade on a quiz or a test, time management skills, note taking, and even awareness of campus resources. So these are all multiple choice questions that would go into iClicker. And then short answer, open-ended, what do you want to learn and what are you most worried about with this course? Now, as I mentioned, the research team has pre-curated these questions, so we know they're the right questions to ask, and they measure directly with retention, but you do have the ability to change or add if you'd like. And so the way that it works is you'll create an iClicker assignment and we'll give you instructions. You'll basically upload these questions. We'll give you these 9 questions. You'll upload it as an assignment and students can do it at their leisure or by a specific due date. Or you can use it live. It could be a really good activity to the first week of class to help students practice using iClicker and also for you to really gauge what's going on in their hearts and minds. So we'll provide you with a PDF that you would upload into iClicker into your instructor software. And then you can view responses, assist your students, or escalate them to the tutoring team or to the retention team or wherever those resources are on your campus. So as we promised, we will be providing this after the webinar. You'll get a link to the recording and to be able to download the class readiness activity. And you can email us with questions here. We wanted to keep this webinar quite short. We know it's the start of the semester and y'all are crazy busy. And so we will leave some time for Q&A.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mandy, and thank you, Natalie. We've had quite a few questions come through, so I'll go ahead and get started on those. And if folks on the line, if you guys still have other questions about iClicker, active learning, the student readiness survey, any types of those questions, anything that you're going through, getting ready for class, please feel free to put them in the chat or in the questions panel, and we will get to as many as possible. Okay, so a couple of questions to get started. Okay, do you offer additional training on how to get started with iClicker? Where would a person go for training?
I can answer that one.
Okay.
All you need to do is just go to iClicker.com. There it pops right up. And then if you just go to the bottom, you can see we have this demos and trainings button that's right here. Go ahead and click on it. And you can sign up for a training. And what's great is you're going to meet with, if your institution has somebody who's dedicated to your institution, you'll meet with your CRS. Otherwise, you'll meet with maybe myself or my colleague Lindsay Thomas or Alana Craig, and they can train you as soon as there's availability. So we're doing a ton of trainings right now. And then we also have a bunch of self-serve items in our support area. So if you don't have time to attend a live training, you can go to support and there's a lot of videos there as well.
Okay, great. Thank you, Natalie. Okay, more questions. Okay, a couple of questions about LMS integration in general, but how does the iClicker work with Canvas, or are they completely separate? And actually, can we ask that question about how does iClicker work with LMSs in general? So Canvas, Blackboard, and so on.
Okay, I can take this one as well. With the 5 big LMSs, so that would be Canvas, Blackboard, Brightspace by D2L, Moodle, and one more, Brightspace, Moodle, and Sakai.
Yes.
We offer a simple LTI integration, which of course requires one-time administrator setup. But with that integration, grades can be synced from iClicker to the LMS in a single column. So all of the iClicker grades go in one column. It keeps it really, really simple. All the iClicker grades are manipulated at iClicker.com, and then they're just synced over using simple LTI. For instructors who are using Canvas, Blackboard, and Brightspace by D2L, we also now offer this really wonderful syncing option called roster and grade sync, and this is something that our instructors wanted for a while. So with roster and grade sync, what's wonderful is again, this takes one-time administrator setup, but the roster from the LMS is preloaded into the iClicker roster, and that way the student onboarding is really, really seamless. And then grades go back into the LMS from iClicker really easily, and it just has more options. It's more robust, and instructors are really enjoying it. So RGS is roster and grade sync. If your institution was using EGS, Enhanced Grade Sync, in the past, roster and grade sync is what you're being upgraded to. So if you haven't done that step yet, make sure we've been contacting you. So go ahead and look at your emails. This is more of an admin thing. But those are the options that we have for LMS sync. And we're always happy to talk more about your specific school if you want to.
Okay, great. A couple of questions from folks that they created an account to participate in polls for this webinar, but what do they need to do to get started with iClicker as an instructor?
Okay, great. So if you want to get started as an instructor with iClicker, I would say that the best thing that you can do is first, make sure that you have signed in as an instructor, and it'll walk you through really easily the setup for making a new course and all those sorts of fun things. But I also really like our support site. So I just went to iClicker.com, clicked on support, and now I'm just going to search knowledge based, and then I'm just going to look. We have these really great instructor checklists that just tell you how to get started with iClicker Cloud. So this is a nice end-to-end checklist that will again just tell you, okay, this is the first thing that you need to do. You can see we've broken it out by steps. We've included a lot of videos for each of these steps, so we really make it as easy as possible to get everything going if you want to do self-service. And again, you can sign up for a training and we can walk you through that as well.
Okay, great. And a lot of, well, yeah, a lot of questions about that. And we will send the link to this support article through the chat. But like Natalie said, you can just go sign in as an instructor from iClicker.com. You can use the same login information that you just created for your student account. It works both ways. And that gets you into your instructor account, and then it'll walk you through creating a course, and then you just download the software and you're done and ready to go. But again, we'll send that specific article that Natalie's talking about through chat. Okay, great question. Can student responses be tied to specific students? For example, if I wanted to use iClicker polls as a record of participation in attendance.
Yes. So everything that students do through iClicker is connected to a student account unless you are specifically asking anonymous questions. So if they're checking in for attendance, they're doing it through an account that is linked to their names. So all student activity should connect to a specific student unless you're asking an anonymous question. And even when you ask an anonymous question, you do know if student X, who was, in class that day, whether they answered that question or not. You won't know their specific answer to it because it's anonymous, but you still know that that student answered. So everything is really connected to a student identity.
Okay, Great. Let's see. A lot of questions about price. What is the cost for students, Natalie? Or where would they go?
Okay. All right. So the price that a student pays does depend on choices that you've made as an instructor. So for example, if you're using our new Achieve product, iClicker is part of Achieve. Achieve is our new course management solution. And so iClicker is one of the pieces that is included with that. So for our Achieve users, iClicker comes at no additional cost. If you're using a Macmillan textbook otherwise, you can have iClicker bundled with that Macmillan textbook for $5. If you have a student and they're just buying directly through the Play Store or through iTunes, it will be $15.99 for 6 months of use, and that's an all-you-can-eat subscription. They're able to participate in as many classes as they want. And then lastly, something that I think is really great is if you have enjoyed the use of iClicker remotes in the past, you want to keep on using them. Now, anytime a student buys a physical iClicker remote, they also get 5 years of digital access included. So that means that if you're a remote lover, you can continue to ask your students to purchase those remotes and know that they will be covered in their iClicker classes in the future, even if an instructor chooses to use a different kind of technology.
Okay, great. And also keep in mind, many schools these days have site licenses of iClicker, where the school has actually footed the bill for iClicker for all students. And if you're curious if your school is one of those, you can ask your central technology office, or you can reach out to us, email at iClicker, or just shoot us a message here, and we're happy to check for you and get your rep in touch with you to get you information about that. And again, that iClicker access has already been paid for. Additionally, if any of you are using Achieve, which is on our Macmillan side, different books are in Achieve across different disciplines. Access to iClicker is included within Achieve as well. Okay, which is a great question. Somebody just asked, how do we access iClicker through Achieve? Natalie, I can take that one, or if you know, you can take that one. It doesn't matter.
I know it.
Okay, go for it. Go for it.
So just log into Achieve, click on your grade book, and then in the upper right-hand corner, you should see a button that says Sync iClicker. Click that button, and it'll start walking you through the entire process of creating your course and getting it ready for students to join.
Okay, great. A question about Zoom. How can we incorporate iClicker into Zoom sessions, and how is it different than Zoom polling?
Oh, that's a really great question. So right now we're using GoToWebinar to do the webinar right now, but it's very, very similar to Zoom. You know, Zoom is capturing, GoToWebinar is capturing my entire screen, but at the same time, iClicker is capturing my entire screen as well. They work really beautifully together. We use them together all the time as a company. So we've been very happy with how they perform. There are two real differences that I feel like with Zoom polling that are different. Number one, I like Zoom a lot as a tool, but once I have my Zoom the way I like it, I really don't like to fuss with it more than I have to. By having iClicker as a dedicated polling item, I know that I just have to mess with my iClicker when I want it to take my polls, and I'm not changing my view or anything like that for my students. So that's one reason why I prefer iClicker polling over Zoom polling. Another thing that I really find overwhelming in Zoom is the chat function. If you're trying to use the chat function to gather questions from your students, it can become really overwhelming really quickly. So instead of using the Zoom chat function for gathering questions, what I'm seeing is a lot of instructors is what they'll do is when they're ready to take questions from their students, they use iClicker and they say, okay, I'm going to open up an iClicker short answer everybody let me know their questions. And this is great because on one hand, it limits students to asking one question at a time. So you can't have one student who goes in and spams the chat with 15 questions and then they get all the attention and nobody else gets to ask a question. And then the other thing is I can use the iClicker instructor app to preview what they're asking me. So I don't have to put all of the questions that my students are asking me up on the screen for everyone to see. I can have some privacy for myself, but more importantly, privacy for my students. So I really like using the iClicker short answer polls with Zoom specifically for simplicity, but also for privacy and to make it so that those times when my students ask me questions, they're going to ask me directly through iClicker instead of going through that Zoom chat where I'll be honest, it just feels like chaos and I start getting a headache. So I hope that answers the question.
It does. Thank you, Natalie, for that. Also, I don't know if you mentioned iClicker integrates with your gradebook. First off, iClicker has a full gradebook and then integrates with your LMS. Zoom does not do that. So Zoom polls, you just ask them and then they kind of just go into the ether. You don't get a connection back to your gradebook, but with iClicker you do.
Yep.
Okay. Is there a limit to how many students that can participate in a poll at one time?
If there is a limit, we've never reached it.
Yes, so the answer to that is no, there's no limit to how many students can participate in a poll at one time. So great. Okay, here's a question about using iClickers for interactive in-class experiences. I know you went over a few of those, Natalie, but maybe if you want to, point to your favorite activities that you like to use iClicker for.
Oh, some like additional ideas for using iClicker in class?
Yeah, sure.
So I think it's really, I talked about exit polls, which if you're joining our iClicker session today, I'm going to end with an exit poll so you can see what those are like. I really like entrance polls as well. So one of the things I always encourage instructors to do is, when you're walking into class and you just want a few moments to be able to set up your podium and kind of get things, and inevitably you have some students who come up to you and they want to talk immediately. I think it's really great to ask a question at the beginning of every class that calls back to the last class period. So you can just ask your students a question like, what do you remember most from our last class meeting? Or based on last night's reading homework, what do you think we're going to focus on in class today? Anything that asks them to reach back in their memory, I think is a really powerful thing to do because it does things, with the neuroplasticity in their brain, where it has them reaching back with their memory to those other learning experiences and then kind of remembering it and bringing it back, and it gets them more situated for learning. But it also links back to the other class like links in a chain. So I always like to think about an iClicker class like, what kind of a chain am I building here with my iClicker questions? iClicker is always great too. I have a really bad habit of asking in my classes, did everybody get that? And only the most confident person in the entire world is going to raise their hand and go, no, I didn't get that. Can you repeat it? However, with iClicker, I can say, okay, I want everyone to rate 1 being I'm totally lost, 10 being I could teach this class myself. How confident do you feel about what I just explained? And that way I can actually take the pulse of my class in real time. And not only does that help me get feedback, but it also tells my students, hey, I really care a lot about how much in real time you are understanding what I'm putting down. I'm stopping class right now to see how much you're understanding. I'm not just blowing by. And that really sends a powerful message to students that you're there for them in their idea development. I just did a webinar last week on going back to school with iClicker, where I came up with a bunch of other different kinds of back to school ideas that you could use. We also have some ideas for icebreakers that are available if you go to iClicker.com and you go over to our learning center. You can see there's a bunch of different other information that you can use here. You can also search here, but you can see we have tips for onboarding students. We have some summertime trivia. We have other different things, but here you can get more education, more creative ideas about how to use iClicker in your classroom.
Okay, great. And I know we are nearing time and weren't going to necessarily go the whole hour. So I will go through one more question and then we'll move on. There have been a couple questions about using iClicker in different formats, and I just wanted to quickly address that. You can use iClicker in an online format, as Natalie has been doing today. As we noted, it works just easily well with Zoom, GoToWebinar, WebEx, whatever it is you're using. Additionally, you can use it in any of your hybrid classes, whatever that means to you. So if your hybrid class is meeting, part-time in person synchronously and part-time online asynchronously, you can use iClicker in the in-person part as well as the asynchronous online part. You can use iClicker assignments for that, which are self-paced polls basically. Or you can use it just full on in in-person classes as well. Just the same way that we've been doing online, and your students can participate with remotes or with the student app in that setting. So I just wanted to quickly go over that because there were a lot of questions on, what format you can use iClicker in. Okay, so Natalie, I will toss it back over to you to wrap things up. I know you mentioned that you were going to close out with an exit poll, so I'll let you do that and say goodbye.
Yeah, all we have to do at the end of a day with our students or our friends, as it has been today, is simply click that end button. And here I'm given the option to end with an exit poll. And I really hope that if you attended this webinar today, that you do respond to that exit poll. I can virtually hear a bunch of people's phones that just went ding because you get a little alert that says your instructor wants feedback. So I do hope that you give us feedback today. And if you think of any other questions that you have, please shoot us an email. And again, feel free to sign up for a training. We'd love to meet with you. It's a really great time to go over any individual concerns that you would have. And that's what we're here for. We're here to train you and make sure that you have a really great semester with iClicker. So thanks so much for joining us, and hope to see you again. Thanks, guys.
All right. Thank you, guys, and be on the lookout for the recording and that free readiness activity in the email within the next day or so. Thanks.
Thanks, everybody.